everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Day 18 of Saints training camp, the last one in Cali. Ross, how you doing this afternoon, man?
Great, man. Looking forward to being back home in New Orleans. Not looking forward to. Actually, you know what? I am looking forward to the weather. I like the heat. People crazy. I love the heat.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's it for me. How about you?
I'm good. No, and just to prove Ross's point, we had the little tents, and it was kind of like cool breeze. This man like literally went into the sun. Is like, I'm gonna warm up. So like he's not joking. He definitely does like the heat, and so. I mean, look, it is what it is. I'm anxious to get back home. I'm ready in a bit, and so I'll be there before we know it. So that's that kind of. I think before we get into camp and stuff, obviously, want to pay some respects to Ed Daniels, who passed away today, which is Friday, at the age of 67. Man, he's somebody that I think. You probably can attest to this as well, that man, he's so friendly, and like for somebody who was up and coming like me and probably yourself, like gave you the time of day. I had fond memories of talking to him about hockey. Like he was a big St. Louis Blues fan and such, right. And we connected over that a lot and just kind of talking through some of that. And look, Ed was always there to ask the tough questions. I remember last year, him and Jameis getting into really spirited conversation in the locker room, and Ed stood his ground and stuff. And so, Ed will absolutely be missed, and it's just tragic what ended up happening. So, I mean, anything you want to weigh in here for sure? I'm sure you do, but I don't want to speak.
No. And look, my exposure to Ed was very young, right? Like I'd only known him for a couple of years and stuff like that. But in that time, I agree with you. Always gave me the time of day. I was always there when I had questions. The thing that he and I always connected on was travel. He's a very well-traveled dude. And so we would always talk about like different places that we've been, where we want to go, like all those other things and stuff like that. So, so it's a sad day for something like that. I mean, this whole situation has been developing over time and everything, but definitely will be missed. It's gonna be weird not seeing him in the media room and at availabilities and stuff like that. So if nothing, the biggest thing for me though is thoughts and love to his family, because anytime something like that happens, like these are the people that have to shoulder the burden of a loss, and there's no equating that, there's no quantifying that. That's tough.
Yeah, and same thing for the WGNO team, Crescent City Sports, all those guys. I mean, I know it's a friend, a colleague, and all that. That's just horrible. And Ed's done this a long time, so it's sad, it's unfortunate, but we just want to make sure we pay our respects to Ed, because he was great, and I'm sure more information will be out there. If you don't follow Ken Trahan, make sure you follow him and keep up with everything if you want to show some respect and show up. Obviously, I think to funeral and stuff, but yeah. So not to begin on a low note, but I mean, definitely wanted
to reality where we are, man.
Yeah, it is. It is a shocking reality, and so you just never can take things for granted, and life is short. So make of it what you will. You know what I mean? Make it happen. So day 18 of Saints training camp. A little bit more of a relaxed approach. They only went till 10:45 today. So about an hour and 45 minutes on the field, no pads. They were in shells. A lot of teamwork, like team drill work. That is, not teamwork, but also there was teamwork.
Also teamwork.
Right? Also teamwork. I guess let's start. What was some of your early impressions of the day?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was my top performer, I guess, would be Jake Haener on
Dog
the
of
day.
the day?
I thought that dog of the day, absolutely, 100%. I got to tweet it out. I was waiting to tweet it out just with everything going on and stuff like that, but
no spoiling, guys.
So no spoiling. But yeah, so I dog of the day, 100%. I think Jake is excited after every handoff the same way that he's excited after every touchdown. Like he is just, we've talked about his competitive spirit here on the show a couple of times. Nick had a great tweet as well, Nick Underhill over at New Orleans Football, about, hey, not bad for a guy with no arm strength and stuff like that after the Arizona Cardinals game when he gunned that 58-yard pass down the left sideline to A.T. Perry and everything. So like the competitive nature, the competitive spirit, absolutely there for a guy like Jake Haener. But I thought like we saw some really impressive stuff from him today, man. I thought, you and I were really impressed by his pocket mobility, ability to be able to climb the pocket, deliver a pass. Him and Kevin Austin, who is probably the receiver I'm most excited to see on Sunday. Kevin Austin, easily number 81. Connecting on a couple of, first of all, a big play over the middle on this nice little post route where Jake kind of had to deliver it almost sidearm, like just had to take a weird arm angle in order to get the trajectory on the ball, but did it extremely well. Then we saw the fake spike attempt. Jake, all the tricks out these days,
Dan
right?
Marino style.
That's it. He had the play action that fooled everybody on Thursday. Then he had the fake spike that fooled everybody on Friday. Unfortunately, Kevin Austin couldn't get both feet in bounds, but then went right back to him in that same corner again, climbing the pocket, evading the pressure, delivering the ball. Really, really good stuff from Jake Haener. So I think my biggest takeaway was that he was my top performer for the day.
Yeah, I would agree with you, man. I think Jake had a solid week of practice. You know what I mean? I think that he built off of that preseason game. I think he had put in a lot of work this week, and it shows. And it's funny you brought up the comment. I was right there in the locker room next to Nick when he said it. And I'm like, oh, so some of these players do pay attention to what we do say or write and all that, which is funny because we'll talk probably about Matt Hayball and special teams later, but he kind of let us know too that he's like, yeah, I check you guys out when talking about special teams. So it's kind of fun. But Haener, look, and he had a couple of hookups. He hooked up with Samson Nakua on that drive, but I mean, leading the end of game drive, with the offense down, working the field, getting some big connections on it. I mean, it was just about as good as you wanted to see. I mean, it was the Kevin Austin Jr., man. He just, like he has some really good, strong moments. He's just not as consistent sometimes. Like he has a couple of them where he just didn't get it. But like, I just think like he's the guy that's making the play. Like I say this respectfully, but he's new Mason Tipton. You know what I mean? Like he's the one that's always making something happen and doing it. And if people don't see that, well, then I'm sorry, because it's hard not to notice it, right? And so, and he plays special teams, another UFL guy that we kind of have talked about here on this show that has caught our eyes kind of for weeks now, right? And I don't think it's just he just popped up on the radar. He just is making more happen. And so, again, I think he's having a pretty good week as well. But man, it was all about Jake Haener today. I think he was playing extremely well. Spencer Rattler didn't get a lot of work. I think it was just one series, and we kind of have our theories behind that we believe that Spencer Rattler will be number 2 behind Derek Carr on Sunday against the 49ers. Now, how much time they play, I'm not sure, because Michael asked about, do we expect the first team offense on Sunday? I mean, I expect some of the first team offense in some aspects. Like if I'm Trevor Penning, he's playing, like I said, 20, 30 snaps, maybe even the entire game. I mean, you need to get a really good evaluation on him, right? And I know it's running a risk, but, I expect him to play a good bit. We don't expect to see Taliesin Fuanga, back tightness, and Dennis Allen saying everybody can sleep well at night because, he should be ready for week 1, which is a concern because you mentioned it with the back injury. But, yeah, look, I thought Jake was on fire. I think he's had a really good week here. I think Kevin Austin Jr.'s had a really good week. I really like what I've seen from Samson Nakua, and I asked Spencer Rattler about them too as well. And, he just had nothing but good things to say about those guys and the way that they're working and such. And so I think expect those to be featured a lot in the preseason, not only this game against the 49ers, but the Titans too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think this is so nice too, like that you still get an opportunity to see these guys. Remember years ago, it was the cut downs. You were going from 90 to 85, and then 85 to 80 before you cut down to 53 or whatever it was, right? Yeah, there were cuts after each game and everything. And so you sometimes, like a guy like Kevin Austin Jr., who was asked to play so many different positions, Dennis Allen mentioned against the Arizona Cardinals, and he said that the wires might have gotten crossed a little bit for him. That could have cost him his opportunity in previous years with that cut down from 90 to 85 or something like that. Now, all of a sudden, he gets a chance to show it, not only against San Francisco, but then again against Tennessee. Like, this is a really good model. I'm so glad the NFL finally wised up and went this way to put all the cuts at the end. Of the first, especially because you're only cutting 10 players by the time it was all said and done with anyway over the course of those first 2 weeks. So I think that like that's a big thing that I'm excited to see. So I'm excited to see him. I think another standout for me too, John, was that like I don't know if anyone's asked him to stop, but Chase Young just can't stop. Uh, he
Nope.
he was awesome again today, man.
Yeah.
And this is him rushing from different areas, different sides of the field. This isn't just him beating up on a struggling player or anything like that. He's just been in the backfield a lot, and like if he stays healthy, which has not been the same strong point here throughout training camp. Don't get me wrong, but if he stays healthy, he'll. I think the Saints are going to get a good return on investment, especially on an incentive laden contract. I think you're going to get a good return on investment from this guy in terms of what he's going to be able to do for the pass rush.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what their exact plans to use him are, because at this point, if you're keeping him healthy this way and you're only using him really against like in passing situations, which I don't think that's the case because he can blow up the run too. But I
Right.
mean, it's going to be scary because this is another reason why you put Cam inside. I think they've got something really working a lot with those guys with Carl on one side, Chase Young, and they flip him too. Like they flip him on the right side, the left side. They put Cam on that left interior. They have Brian Brzee rushing from that right interior. Like I think those are your four best pass rushers on this team for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they have something there, you know what I mean? And so I feel good about that, in terms of it. And Dennis Allen even said, like, we were worried about the defensive line coming in. Like that was one of our question marks, one of the things I had wanted to see.
Right.
And I think I've got that answered pretty early in camp. And obviously we're 18 days in, one preseason game down, but we're going to see more preseason games. But Chase Young has been advertised and then some, and then even more, right? Like, I mean, this is like the extra spice in your crawfish boil that you're just like, ooh, it just takes it to that next level. Like that's what Chase Young has done for me. And like Carl Granderson, of course, has been Carl Granderson. Like I think low key, we don't talk about him a lot, but I think he's had a solid camp too. And so I think those two guys that staple, and if they can get what they need from Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner, which again, it hasn't been bad at training camp, right? If you get that with the interior play, which I think has been encouraging. I mean, Christian Boyd still making plays again. I want to see more of him in the preseason, but I've seen plenty. I feel much better about this defensive line going into this season than I had been, previously when we're like, I don't know, because we were worrying about what we are going to get with Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, and the interior. But I think I got my questions answered for sure.
Dude, 100%, 100% completely agree with you. My two biggest questions coming into camp were offensive line, defensive line, which is not where a competing team wants to be. But I feel like we've gotten the defensive line questions answered. I think that this defensive line has the talent. Now, will they be able to execute when it comes to game flow and what happens when their back's up against the wall? Like there's all these other things that happen during the season that you cannot replicate in a training camp situation. That is of course always the case. But I think that like if there's any place to where I feel better about where the Saints are versus when I did 18 practices ago, it's the defensive line, 100% the defensive line. The other place that I feel better about now than I felt 18 practices ago was the depth at linebacker behind the three starters.
I knew you were going there.
Did you feel the same way?
I felt your sense in like I sensed
it. That's been a big and pleasantly surprising, though we shouldn't be surprised because this is just what Michael Hodges does. But you looked at me today and you were like, it's a linebacker factory all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like it's
Mike Rose.
It's pretty right. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, like what the Saints have been able to do. And it feels like Mike Hodges just gets better and better and better every year at developing talent.
Yeah, and again, go back to past pods. Don't forget to like, subscribe. But past pods, I don't know how many episodes ago I said I think this might be his last year. Like, you can't keep him out of the spotlight, from the spotlight. Like, he's going to get an opportunity, and players love to play for him. And the linebacking core has just been excellent. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter who they put out there. I feel really good about it. And guys like Monty Rice, Anthony Orji, and those are guys that are going to have a tough time, maybe making this final roster because they are considerable for this roster. Like I feel like they could make this roster for sure. I mean, it's tough for like a guy like Jalen Ford getting hurt with another hamstring, but whoever they put out there has all played really well. Mike Rose is another one. He just kind of came on board and he's
Yeah.
making plays. He's made plays for days now. And so he's going to see probably a good bit of time in the preseason. But yeah, you're right. I feel good about that linebacking room. I think defense as a whole, right? For me, the defense, I feel pretty good. And I know no Marshawn, no Paulson Adebo. That's obviously something that I expect them to be full strength when it comes to 100%, when it comes to week one.
Yeah.
But even with Alante playing the way he is, like, I feel really good about it. I feel good about the strides that Kool-Aid McKinstry's making. That hit he put on Stanley Morgan Jr. today. Man, I don't know why a flag wasn't called, but good Lord, again. And I wish we could record those sessions, because if we did, that thing would just go viral, because man, McKinstry had this just awesome hit and it was just something to appreciate. But look, I don't worry about the defense. And I even feel, like I said, good about the depth. And we're not even talking about guys like Nathan Shepard and, Colin Saunders. We're not talking about, the safety depth really. And we talked heavily about the Justin Simmons yesterday on Thursday's pod. So go back and listen on that, and why we kind of talk you off the ledge and why they're okay at this position. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like it was hit or miss or, boom or bust there. You know what I mean? Like they got a solution there. But all attention is on the offense, right? I mean, it is a thing. And I know these preseason games, you mentioned the cut down, like they went from 90 to 75 to 53. That was like the recent ones. And so now it's just 90 to 53. And now, like, there's reasons to tune into the final preseason game. Like, this is not just a whatever game for the Saints. Like, it's legit Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. It's guys like Kevin Austin Jr. Can he make the roster? Like, can this pass protection? Who's going to step up and be that left guard? Who's going to step up and be if anybody challenges Penning? Like, there's so much to watch over these next two preseason games, and I don't think they're throwaway by any reason. I want to answer this question, but then ask you too. But Trevor Penning, if he doesn't turn the corner, is this one of those situations where, let's say Penning does get 20 or 30 snaps and it just is disastrous? We talked about contingency plans, but just to answer the question, do you think the Saints are like, okay, I've seen enough, we just need to move on?
I don't think that they'll move on. I think he would lose his starting role, right? I think he wouldn't win the starting role in that case, but I don't think they would move on. I think you still want players that you've invested time in on your roster for depth purposes, things like that. And then, I know this is like everybody's favorite thing to do with struggling tackles is move them inside. But like, there's always that opportunity, right? Is like, okay, if you have to go to Landon Young at right tackle, then you can start cross-training Trevor Penning at other positions on the interior and things like that. I don't think that moving Trevor Penning inside is going to magically turn him into a starter if he can't start at either left tackle or right tackle. You know what I mean? I don't see that as a reality. But if he's a depth guy all of a sudden, which would really stink, like you don't want your first round pick that you moved around a bunch of assets for, advance a bunch of assets for, to be your depth guy. Like, you just don't want that. And I know Trevor Penning doesn't want that either. Like, I will say this, every time that I show up to practice, Trevor Penning is working his tail off. He is out there. He's working with a coach. He's working on his pass sets. One of the first to hit the field all the time, everything like that. Like, I can't say that enough, because I've been on both sides of the Trevor Penning conversation. I was on the, hey, they should be more patient with him, let him pan out. They knew he was going to be a project, this, that, and the other. And then I've been on the, like, hey, he's struggling and it's not looking good side of it all. But the one thing that I've always seen from Penning is that it's never because he's not working, right? It's not that he's not paying attention during practices, or he's, I think, Dennis Allen might have used the word, or maybe I'm just plugging it in, but I'm pretty sure Dennis Allen used the word lollygagging the other day, which I thought was my favorite. But like, there's nobody like loafing around off to the sides of practice. Yeah. So basically what he was talking about, and Trevor Penning included. Like, he's always working. He's always doing something, talking to somebody. He's trying to get there. He's trying to make it all click. And so I think that there's value in that. And if he doesn't pan out being the starter, I don't think that they move on from him. I just think that they look to see, okay, where else is he going to be of value? And maybe that's a depth piece. Maybe that's inside, though I doubt it. All these other things. So I don't think they'd be quick to move off of him. Maybe he doesn't live on with the Saints past, his rookie contract or anything, that makes sense. But I don't think that they would be in a situation to where they would just cut him. And then I don't know if there's a market to trade him either. You know what I mean? I've seen people say all the time, well, they should just trade him for what? Right? Like,
yeah, what are you going to get?
If you're upset with a player because they aren't producing, or if you're upset with a player because it hasn't caught on, the solution is not trade them, because no one's going to say, oh yeah, that asset that you invested a first round pick in that you're really disappointed. Yeah, we'll give you a third for that. No one's going to do that. It's not, there's no reason to do that. So I would imagine they would still keep him around. There's a long-winded answer. Sorry, but
sure. No, absolutely. But I mean, you got to, because people are just going so extreme. You know what I mean? Like, it just spreads like wildfire. And I understand, right? Like, I get it. You know what I mean? But
100%,
at the same
100%.
time, we haven't seen too much on Jumbo. I think we've seen maybe one session that had a Jumbo set in it.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying Trevor Penning should be the Jumbo guy, right? Like, if it doesn't work, he should be the Jumbo guy. But that could be a role for him if that things don't pan out. But I think the way the team is operating, and look, I think for him, the thing that he's struggling with is the head thing, the thing that Isaiah Foskey was struggling with last year. I think the thing that A.T. Perry was struggling in early. I just don't overthink it, right? Like, I just feel like that is happening, is that he's thinking too much, and then it's just not leading to what needs to be happening on the field, because you got to be quick on your feet. You got a lot of speed and power that you have to combat as a tackle, especially going to that right side. So look, I hope it comes together, but I just don't think we're going to be at a point where, okay, he doesn't do well on Sunday, then they're going to say, okay, we'll just cut him or trade him. You know what I mean? I just don't think that's where they're going to go. Right. And hopefully they're got some calls that were made, and hopefully they got some contingency plans in place. I know what they have on the roster, but I don't know that anybody's going to come and take the job from Trevor Penning, like we've talked about on past episodes. It just doesn't look likely. And so, they believe in him still, but at the same time, we're kind of like, hey, the hourglass is running out, and they got to get this thing figured out. We know that, and we expect to see a lot of him in the preseason.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was intriguing. NOLA.com's Jeff Duncan put out kind of a report around, like, here's the situation on Trevor Penning. And one of the last lines in that kind of evaluation was that the Saints know that they want to give him time, and that he's got to be able to show up and all these other things. If it doesn't pan out, then they'll need to go to plan B, which makes it sound like there is a plan B. And so I'm curious what that plan B is. Is the plan B in the building? Is the plan B outside of the building? Like, what's the contingency there? But it sounds like at least there are some level of contingencies available that this team is prepared with in case they do have to pivot. And that's the most you can kind of ask for right now.
Right. And don't think they haven't had conversations like, oh, let's identify people if we got to trade for somebody, or we're monitoring these guys, or whatever the case may be. Like, those conversations, I guarantee, have already been happening, right? Like, they aren't just going to go into and be like, all right, well, this didn't work. Now what do we do? Like, I think that's already taken place. So that's just, a thing that happened. Let me get this one real quick. It's kind of a quick one. Talking about the QB article. Thank you for reading. First of all, definitely, if you haven't gone to Saints News Network, Saints on SI, check it out for Sports Illustrated. But it just wants to know why Rattler only got 2 reps. Our theory is that Rattler is going to be number 2 behind Derek Carr on Sunday. And it was a lighter practice. I don't think it has anything to do with Spencer Rattler. He said his thigh is 100%. Like, there's no issues with them or anything like that. It's just it was Haener's day in the rotation. I think they wanted to get Haener some more work, because he's probably going to be the 3rd string guy on Sunday. And so that's all I think, unless you see anything other reason why Rattler didn't get anything. I don't think it has anything to do with anything else.
No. I agree with you. I'll just add one little additional piece of context, is that you saw the exact same thing for Jake Haener yesterday. And so this is, so here's what kind of feeds into John and I's observation here, that Spencer Rattler will finish the first half. Let's say it that way. He might start the first half. He might not, if they put starters out there, whatever, but he'll be the quarterback to finish the first half. And then Jake Haener will be the quarterback to finish the second half. Seems to be the situation. One of the reasons why we believe that, yesterday, they were working end of first half drills. Spencer Rattler took those snaps along with Derek Carr. Today, they were working end of game first team drills, or end of game simulated drills. And in that situation, Jake Haener took those snaps along with Derek Carr. Spencer Rattler did not. And so you could see, like, what they were preparing each quarterback for And we saw the same rhythm last week before the Arizona Cardinals game, where Haener took the end of half reps or simulation reps, whilst Rattler took the end of game simulation reps. And you saw what the rotation was there. And so this is what prompts us to believe what the situation will be here in 2020 or 2024, what the situation will be here in the second preseason game.
Imagine that, and paying attention, getting all that information. That's I mean, that's
Who'd have thought?
probably what's going to happen. I mean, I'm just saying, you might have heard it here that's what's going on. And just get a couple other ones because we're going to move through camp. It wasn't a ton of action, but we
wasn't a big
hit
day
on
today.
some of the big one. But it says, guys watching from Ireland, big Jets fan. Well, thanks for tuning in. You know, even though
Sorry
you're
about the
fan.
Jets. Also,
keeping an eye on
That's
Charlie
things
Smith.
right now.
Likely outcome that he's kept on the practice squad because it's an extra free spot because he came through IPP, or is there any chance of him winning this starting spot? Trying to be realistic and assume not. Well, what I'd say in Charlie Smith is that, you know, Groupie had a 7 of 8 day. He missed one that was from 42.
42. No, you're right.
42,
You're right.
yeah, 42, right? But other than that, I mean, he's looked pretty good. I think Charlie Smith is looked fine. I just don't know. Like, Smith has the leg, right? He's got the leg. I don't question anything. They could kick it from 68, almost 70 yards, like we saw in warmups last before the game against Cardinals. He's got the leg. The accuracy is really what you want to look at. And for me, I think the big difference is the kicks between, you know, the 49 are going down, but 49 to that 30-yard range, like 30 to 49-yard range. Let me just say it properly. I think Groupie's a lot more solid there and more consistent and more accurate. Hence, that's why I think Groupie is the guy at this point, kind of like Ty goes the runner, but nothing's been determined according to Dennis Allen. And I don't think anything's been determined as well. But, you know, there is not a pressure for them to say, let's put Charlie Smith on the starting roster day one because of the IPP exemption. Like, he's technically a 3-year contract, and he is going to be an extra practice squad guy. So, I mean, any other varying opinion on Charlie Smith? I mean, he's fascinating to watch, and I love watching him, talking to him. He's great. Same thing with Blake Groupie too.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just add that, like, as John said, the decision isn't made yet. So to your question, is there a chance that he wins the starting spot? Yeah, there's absolutely a chance that happens because he's a very talented dude. But at the absolute worst, he still ends up on this roster at some capacity and potentially gets to develop for a year before becoming the Saints kicker another season or something like that. Like, that would be the other way that I would look at it.
Yeah, for sure. Super simple. This is another one that's really easy to answer. How's the Debo look? Looked good early on in camp until the injury, the groin. So that's where he's been. He's been working off to the side. You know, guys like him, Ugo Amadi did a little bit more. I noted in my recap that they were working with Matt Rhea today. So I think it's a little bit of a step up than normal. Like, when they just come out here and such, maybe they're just kind of getting like final approval from Matt Rhea, and that's just me speculating. That's not saying that's what's happening, but look, he looked fine. He looked good before, and you know, I expect him to be here week 1. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're going to rush him back or anything, but those groin injuries are ones to keep an eye on. Like, you don't want to run the risk of re-aggravating it, and so this is why you have a Kool-Aid McKinstry on the roster. This is why you're cross-training him in the slot. This is why Alante's success and his camp has been so instrumental for this team, you know. So, look, he looked good early on, but we just haven't seen him for a while. I don't remember last day we saw him was like day 11, 12 maybe is when he left.
Yeah, something like that.
I have to go back there. But, yeah. Let's see. It keeps coming up, but why no Bakhtiari and why no Donovan Smith? Donovan Smith, I know that's a name that got thrown out. That's a relatively newer name that gets thrown out too, to play right tackle, a veteran that's played for a while. Any thoughts on Donovan Smith?
Isn't Donovan Smith the dude that Cam Jordan used to call speed bump?
I think so. I'm pretty
sure that's the same dude that Cam used to call speed bump. So that might throw a wrench in that plan. But I don't know. We've seen players who talk trash end up on the same team before. That ain't no thing.
Yeah, that ain't no
thing. But I would say that, like, a big part of it is that, like, David Bakhtiari is 35, 36, something like that.
Yeah, Donovan Smith's 31. So.
Yeah, coming off of injuries, things like that. Probably not necessarily the look that the Saints want since they've been having trouble staying healthy
Yeah.
themselves. And then I don't feel like Donovan Smith gives you a better outlook than any of the other guys that are already in the building either. And so I think part of it is just like being realistic about is probably the team being realistic about like what's more likely. A guy that has not been great throughout his career is going to be better than the guy that hasn't been great yet, or the guy that hasn't been great yet turning a corner.
Yeah.
I think like the reality is probably that like you go with the guy that hasn't been great yet, but has the time to turn the corner. I'm not saying Donovan Smith hasn't been great. I don't remember him being a standout performer in Tampa. And so,
yeah. And Kansas City
they've
was
had
tough too.
yeah, Kansas City too. I forgot about that. And so, they brought in instead Jesse Davis. They brought in Tremaine Johnson. They brought back, well, I guess he's not a tackle, but they brought back Mark Evans. Like you've seen the moves that they've been making over in the offensive line while these other guys have been available. And you'll notice that other teams around the NFL haven't signed those guys either. And other teams around the NFL have arguably worse offensive line collections than what the Saints actually have, believe it or not. And so I think that like that is, or worse performing, right? We haven't actually seen this one from the Saints yet, to be fair. But I think that gives you an indication. It's not just that the Saints haven't signed them; they're on the market for a reason. And while other guys have been plucked off the market, so I just think that the outlook on those names as recognizable names is not equal to the value that you might get by signing them. That might be the way that NFL teams are looking at it.
Yeah, go back to Thursday's episode. We talked about possibilities. I mean, we talked about it might have been Thursday, it might have been the one before, but we kind of walked down the right tackle spot.
Right.
We talked about like Cam Irving. That should be a quick, okay, hey, this is
That
what's
would
going
make
on.
sense.
Be ready. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like that would be a
Yep.
quick one, and he's smart. He's a veteran player that could come in and somebody I think would do it. I think some of the things with some of these veterans too are just waiting for the right situations because, if you are coming off of career injuries or not career injuries, but like big injuries and stuff, you want to go make sure your body's being put on the line for a team that has a legitimate contention spot. And, I'm not saying that's it's better than, to go play for a bottom of the barrel team versus go and play for a contender and just not getting paid. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think that might be some of the case for Bakhtiari is that he wants to play, if he's going to play this year, that, he wants to play for a team that has a shot and ride out in the sunset, if you will. And so, I mean, that's just my 2 pennies as well. But yeah. So good day from Lou Headley today. I thought he had one of his best days at camp. We talked about Matt Hayball and I got to talk with him after. And so I nerded out. I was telling you earlier, but just kind of catch everybody up because I get fascinated with how the ball changes trajectory and how he does everything. He's talking about how he described it was pointing the nose downward when he's in the operation, and the way he places and drops it is what makes it go like this helicopter end over end type of kick versus the spiral and stuff. And I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I know Ross as well, but good day for Lou Headley. I think that punting competition is yet to be determined, but a good problem to have, I think, right at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Like, the good thing here is that the thing that I love to see in camp battles is someone win the job, not someone lose the job. And I think that like this punter battle is a really good example of both these guys staying alive, both these guys fighting. Someone is eventually going to win that role. I'd say the same thing about Blake Grupe and Charlie Smith. It feels like it's more likely to be Blake Grupe, but someone's going to win the job as opposed to, okay, well, I guess we'll go with this one that, wasn't as, that was not as bad as the other. Like, it's a much better scenario to be in a situation here where you actually see somebody come in and, to borrow from DA, take the bull by the horns. And so I'm all about that when it comes to these two guys. I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues to develop for both of them. And I think that the preseason games are going to be really, really important for them both.
Yeah, and something I pointed out to you was the fact that when they come back home, punting in the Superdome, like most of their games are indoors, and they don't get to, like when they do the practice facility and they go indoors, every single punt hits the top of the rafters. So you don't really get a good gauge on the punter in there. They have to be outside there, or they have to be in the Superdome kind of in that aspect, or punt, you know what I'm saying, for you to get kind of the full effect. And so I'll be interested to see what happens when we get back to New Orleans for it. And look, I kind of can't wait. Like Cali's been good, been here almost a month, and so it's about time to go home. But job's not done yet. Anything? Well, let's see. I was gonna say anything else to say, but let's also talk about the big elephant in the room. No Rashid Shaheed today. That's big.
Yes.
Toe injury, or DA said toe/foot, toe or foot injury. That's concerning because he just came back from a hamstring injury where they were cautious. And now this is another injury for Rashid Shaheed, and we saw how much a difference the offense was performing, like how much better they were with Rashid Shaheed in there, like how much life got injected there. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but at the same time, like, are you kind of a little bit worried that this player has now a different injury for another thing?
Yeah, I think you always get concerned when it comes to the alignment of toe injuries in the New Orleans Saints, or the lack of alignment on those. Like those typically have not panned out well for New Orleans. It's kind of oil and water in that situation. But I will say that Peyton Turner, Nathan Shepard, both of them also had toe injuries earlier on here in the offseason. They missed a practice and they came back. So I'll wait to see. I think the big thing is that, like, you want to do everything you can to keep Rashid Shaheed healthy, right? Like, you don't want to lose that speed in your offense. You don't want to lose a guy who is your most dynamic playmaker, I would say, on offense outside of maybe Taysom. Like, maybe you can make the argument that Taysom is that guy. But in terms of all the different things that you can do with that you could do with the Rashid Shaheed, you want that guy on the field. And so, so that could mean two things. It could mean that there's a really bad toe/foot injury here and it's not great. Or it could mean that Rashid Shaheed woke up this morning and his toe was sore and the Saints said, okay, well, then you're not practicing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we got to see. We got to see which way it all goes. But hopefully, because the Saints already have enough sort of what I would call deficiencies over on the offensive side when it comes to their roster, I would be very overly cautious with Rashid Shaheed. Like, protect your greater assets, just like they've done with Alvin Kamara, just like I imagine they would do with Chris Olave. So hopefully everything pans out well and Rashid Shaheed is back out there for either practice next week or at least is good to go week 1.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm saying. We're worrying. We're going to worry more about next week. Like, if we don't start seeing. So again, This is what could happen with some of these players. And again, I'm not saying this is what happened, but they could have just said, okay, Kendre, like, go back to New Orleans, go to our facility so you can get proper treatment for your hamstring and then be good to go for next week. Like, that 100%. Could legitimately happen for some of those players. And again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but in the realm of possibilities and how this team operates, that could be likely scenarios that some of these players could be back home in New Orleans already, getting ready, hopefully ready to hit the field. And so hopefully it's nothing serious with Rashid Shaheed, but they need Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
I'm laughing at this comment. Jonathan, thank you. Is there any good news for this team? It's a good question. Like, here's the thing, because I think that people are under the impression that, and I've seen it, a 5-win team, they're just not going to be good. Like, I get it. Atlanta right now on paper looks like the team to beat. I thought the Bucks would still be on top of the division, but if we're crowning paper champions, Atlanta looks pretty appetizing right now. And New Orleans is kind of hovering on that third conversation. I feel like the good news is I think this defense is still going to be top half of the league. I think they can be flirting with top 10 in a lot of categories. I feel like the run defense has got better. I think Chase Young's going to make an enormous impact. I think their linebacker room is a bunch of dogs. Willie Gay Jr. is going to be a game changer for this defense. I'm telling you, he's going to play extremely well, and you guys are going to see all that. I think their back end is extremely talented. I'm very encouraged by what I see from Will Harris. I'm encouraged by what I see from Jonathan Abram and Jordan Howden as well. I think that they're going to get that answer. One of those guys are going to need to step up in the next 2 preseason games to solidify that spot. And then offensively, here's what should be the good news. This is a new offensive scheme that is going to be leaps and bounds better than everything that we've seen in the past several years. And they don't need to be elite level, right? Like, I get it. You got to worry about right tackle. You got to worry about this offensive line because it's the butter, the flour to make the roux, right? Like, you got to have that to make a roux. And so if it doesn't come together, then it's going to be plain, bland, and all this other stuff. But, I feel like, pale. You're like making it from water. Like that's all it is.
Right.
It's just gross. But I think offensively with Alvin in there, Chris Olave looks great. I think once they get Juwan Johnson back, it's going to open up things. But this offense has the capability, and this team, if everything clicks, to not just be a team that limps in at the end and fights to the end. Like I think they could be better than what they have to start the year. You know what I mean? And then not having to say, all right, well, we got in this big old hole and we got to climb our way back out of it and fight. Like I just feel like it's at least the mood I get is that it could be better than what it has been in previous years. So that's my good news that I would tell to you. Ross Jackson has obviously a great opinion too. So why doesn't Ross Jackson tell us what he believes as well?
I'll tell you good news from today. I thought that the run game on the offensive side of the ball finished strong. I thought that it finished camp really strong, or finished West Coast camp very strong. They technically are continuing training camp next week, but I thought that the run game finished really strong here in camp, and so that should tell you two things. First of all, remember there was no Alvin Kamara. There was no Kendre Miller, who I don't think did we see Kendre Miller at all today?
No, that was another question. No Kendre Miller, nothing work off the side, nothing like that. So,
So maybe he went back to New Orleans early. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like go to the facility and like get work in and stuff like that. So you're right. And so without those two guys, and then with Jamal Williams back off of a vet day, I thought Jamal Williams ran really well today. I thought James Robinson ran really well today. And I saw some nice things as well from Jordan Mims, Jake Haener. But I saw several 5-6+ yard runs. I don't think we've seen anything so far here in camp that I would call like a 20+ yard run. But we also haven't seen the team. We also haven't seen these running backs actually get the opportunity to break tackles. It's just, okay, where did the first contact happen? That's where you're down. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's kind of, it's too hand touchy in that way. Yeah. And so, except for when Kool-Aid McKinstry's closing in on you. And so I think that like that would be the thing that I would highlight as a positive from today, like that we actually saw, was that I thought that the run game probably had one of its stronger performances in the final day of camp. Now, there were no pads today, but I think we've seen strong days in pads too, right? So I'm just saying, I feel like they finished strong today on that run game. And the reason why I highlight that is because if this offense is going to work, if it's going to work this season, which look, I'm going to tell you that it's different. I can't tell you that it's going to work. We got to wait and see what happens once they get on the field. But they need the run game to work in order for that to maximize what they can do in this offense. And so seeing a strong finish for this Saints offense in the run game in California's training camps, I think was a positive thing too.
Yeah, I don't want to overlook Taysom Hill either. Like,
yeah, right. Of course.
Fullback dives. Yeah. Like we see more fullback dives to Taysom Hill in this camp than I can remember, and he's exciting to watch.
More fullback dives than we've seen. Period. Right? Like,
yeah, like they might run one or two Adam Prentice fullback dives in a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, and those are fourth down situations. That I got to be excited about Taysom too. Like, I think he's somebody that is going to have a distinct role in this offense. They're going to use him properly, and we kind of even said this in the preseason, like. You're not seeing the full bag of tricks on this offense. Like we're seeing completely different looks on how they do things right now in practice. They're not doing the same things in the preseason. I guarantee you they're not going to do the same things in preseason on the 49ers. They might show you like a peek behind the curtain, but I don't expect to see anything, awe-inspiring. But look, I get it. We're coming off of a day where the Falcons got exponentially better on defense in a couple days, consecutive days. And we were wondering what the Saints plan is going to be at right tackle, right? Like that's the biggest thing is that they're here getting improvements on defense. Saints kind of stuck in this limbo boat right now with right tackle. And I think it'll come together in some aspect, and they don't have much of a choice because you can't sit here and say, well, I missed the playoffs again because our right tackle situation wasn't where it needed to be.
Right.
No, you brought in the new offensive line coach. You said you're going to give him a fresh start. You got him help. He got help. At some point, it's not on that. It's got to look at coaching. And so it's a very important year for Dennis Allen. He's got to make sure that he gets this team where it needs to go. And I mean, I think he's facing a ton of pressure himself, but at the same time, the pressure is probably more from the fan base than it is inside the building. Like, let's be real. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I'll tackle both of these. Is missing tipped in return? No, he's just been an observer. So, that hamstring issue is keeping him out again. He was out there today just observing. I'll be interested to see who makes the trip to San Francisco because I think some people might just go back to New Orleans and such and get ready for camp next week. But he's a guy that really needs to get back in the fold, like we've kind of said, because guys above him are basically taking his spot away, right? Like the Kevin Austin Jr. And look, I tell you, Bub Means is starting to work more with the first team and stuff. I mean, he's getting a couple of targets here and there. I don't know if it's too little too late for Bub Means. I wouldn't say that, but he's somebody I really can't wait to see against the 49ers. I think we're going to see him either, go in and show out or, it'll be kind of a mixed bag for him. I think he's a guy that can come in and really make a difference. And I feel like the pressure is on for him to make a difference too. All right, let's see. Yeah, of course. I don't Walk for Jesus International Disciple Revival says, I don't believe you play unless you play to win. So I don't believe any team plays not to contend the ultimate prize. NFL is any given Sunday. Yes. Why don't you consider guys the Saints a contender? I don't say contender for a Super Bowl. I mean, like anything could happen, but I think contend as in they need to get into playoffs to be successful. Like, I don't know. Division is always your number one goal. And they'll say that every single season, win the division. That's our number one goal. But they just need to get into playoffs. Like, that's really what matters here is you can't turn in another 9-8 season and say it was a good season. Like they did that last year. There wasn't a good season just because your record says I finished above 500. They didn't get in the playoffs. Like that's a failure. That is not just I feel good about this season. Like you can't. And the players didn't like it. I think the attitude, demeanor, the competitiveness of camp has meant so much difference this year. And I mean, again, I'm not going to tell you that they're going to be 12-5 or 13-4. I still think 10 is probably as high as I can go. I think 9-8 is probably still where I hover around, but I still think 10 is as high as they can go. But they need to show me personally that they can beat a good team. They need to beat a Kansas City, a Dallas, or Philly early in the season. Then I'll be more inclined to believe that this team is capable of winning 10 or 11 games. But until then, if they can't beat those teams, then I can't say that they're a legitimate contender in much of anything, right? So, So that's my soapbox. Ross, what about you?
No, it's good. I I'll kind of answer by reframing a little bit of what the question was, because my adjustment would be, if I were saying this out loud, I don't believe that a team plays not to compete for the ultimate prize. The NFL is any given Sunday. I think that we agree that this team will be a competitive team and is trying to be a competitive team, but there's a difference between being a competitor and being a contender. When you talk about contenders, you're talking about guys that are you're talking about teams that are at the top of the NFL. The New Orleans Saints are not at the top of the NFL. The top of the NFL belongs to the people that were at the top of the NFL last year. And so you might look at Kansas. Well, you certainly look at Kansas City. You certainly look at San Francisco. I think you could look at other teams as well. Miami, right? You got to look at Buffalo, all these other things. Although Buffalo's maybe regressing a little bit. As they're kind of at the end of their first cycle, but they're going to get their second cycle started, and we'll see what that looks like for them. And so I think there's a difference between being a competitive team and being a contending team. I think the New Orleans Saints will be a competitive team in a situation and in a league where you might look at other teams as not necessarily competitive. But I don't look at them as a contending team, i.e. a team that is like amongst the upper percentile of the NFL when it comes to the conversation of who will win a Super Bowl in 2024. I can't put the New Orleans Saints in that category. That's not to say that they can't get there. That's not to say that they can't surprise and be there, but it's definitely not my expectation when it comes to them. So I would just draw the delineation between being competitive and being a contender. One of those tags fits the New Orleans Saints right now. The other doesn't, until, like you said, John, they prove otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. And look, I've said this, I don't know how many times on the pod that I'm not getting angry, but like for fans are right to be skeptic. Like you 100%. Have gone through this cycle long enough, and I know some people think this is the dark days. To hold my beer says people in the 70s and 60s when they were around,
for sure.
Even some of the Ditka years. Like there's just been these different cycles where the Saints are just not a good team ever. And so like, I don't think it's the dark ages, but at the same time, I just think they got to break this cycle of mediocrity. And that's the thing is that, you know, they do that one of two ways: win the football games they need to, or strip it down, tear it down, and do what they need to. But I don't see ever a rebuild coming right anytime soon. Like I just don't think so, because again, I maintain they did this 2-year window with DeMario, Cam, and Tyron. Like this is their 2-year window to try to make any type of run, and it starts this year. So maybe they could make improvements this year and then say, okay, if we can at least get to the playoffs, get to the divisional round, maybe the year after that we push all in and try to make a run that way, you know. And I'm not saying that's absolutely what's going to happen, but I can see it on the surface that could be a possibility, what they're thinking based off of the roster moves that they have. And there's so many things to figure out there in between, you know, Kamara's contract, Ryan Ramczyk, what happens with him, and everything else under the sun. But, you know, I get it. Like, I get why people are not too high on this team. You know what I mean? And I know some of it centers around who runs the team and who's in charge, and, you know, who's the head coach. I get that. I understand. But, you know, Dennis Allen has a strong background in defense. Like, he can run a defense like nobody's business. And we see that time and time again. Like, his class is like he teaches a master class at sometimes. Right. And he's just got to prove himself better as a head coach. And he knows that. Like, I mean, and this team knows that as well. So,
yeah.
Anyway, anything else you want to put on day 18? I think we covered most of it, but just
I think we hit everything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, of course, if you haven't, go to Locked On, check out Ross's work there, and you can go on Saints News Network and check out all the written work there as well. And so, again, and look, you're just question. Team has to show me they're committed and compete every year. Winning division isn't good enough. Winning a playoff game isn't good enough. Yeah, it is about winning the Super Bowl, but I don't think they're there yet. Like, you might have the mentality, but you still got to go play the games, and you still got to show up and play the games. But I tell you what is different is the accountability, at least on paper, sounds like it's there. So it sounds like you make a mistake now, then maybe you get some consequences from it. Whereas before, it's like, well, he's our best player, we got to keep him in. Hopefully that's not the case. At least that's what they're saying. We're going to see if that's actually true or not. So anyways, all right. Well, Ross, obviously big launch coming on Sunday for you. I want you to make sure that you plug that, and everybody that is watching, listening, obviously go make sure you support Ross. But what do you got coming on Sunday?
John knows how much I don't promote my own work. And so
I'll be your hype man, dude. It's okay.
He's so supportive, and he's like being a hype man, and I just love it so much. Thank you, John.
Of course.
Yes, LouisianaSports.net is set to launch on Sunday, which will be part of our game coverage during the Saints preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers. So go bookmark LouisianaSports.net. We will be live soon, and make sure you're checking that out. And then, of course, the Locked On Saints podcast is available every single Monday through Friday, and then some. I'm going to do probably like a 10 a.m. Central Time live stream Sunday morning just to answer some questions, and then we'll be live after the game as well. John will be at the game. I will not be at the game, but I will begin covering games with the home preseason game, and then I'll be at every game outside of that for the regular season. So make sure you follow along with John for stuff during the game as well, and it will be live after the game and all that over at Locked On Saints. So good stuff, man. And I'm excited this week because we get Ullman practice fans.
Yep.
We get Superdome practice fans. So if you see us, as I always say over in Locked On Saints, if you see us, please say hi, everything like that, because we're excited to be back home. So thanks, John.
Yeah, this man gets a lot of love out in public, and it's awesome. And it's just, it's right. Like, I'm just saying, like, again, not trying to say I'm being the hype man, but Ross does some phenomenal work. He does some really well thought out researched pieces, like the whole rugby ball piece. Like, that is something that has been built upon from other people that have taken notice, or even the thing about the defensive backs using goggles today, which is one of my little minute observations. Ross has already talked about that and researched that, like the stuff, the minutia, big words, Ross, that Ross has done those types of things. And so, again, you do great work. And so
Thank you,
I
man.
can't say enough good things about you. Support him. And yes, please say hi if you see us. We're not above anybody else, guys. I promise you.
Yeah.
We're about as
Oh yeah.
genuine act as you see here. We're just two guys who love covering this team and want to give it all the information we can to you. So,
Yep.
well, yeah, cool. So travel day for the Saints tomorrow on Saturday.
Yep.
That is, I keep saying tomorrow, like, people that listen are like,
I
what are you
know. I do
talking
that
about?
too. I
Like
do
if
that
you
too.
listen to it on, next Tuesday, you're going to be like, what?
What do they
Like
mean?
you'll be all discombobulated. Another big word. But yeah, so keep up with all the information and we have for you. Again, we'll get our pod stuff set up when the game season comes around, and we'll figure out stuff at Tulane and all that stuff, when it comes. But y'all enjoy your weekend. On behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out for another Second and Saints episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we will talk at you soon. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Love you.